1111, welcome to Syllables. So what's about segments? What's about speech sounds? Well, we talked about the fact that there are some strings of English sounds which don't sound like they could possibly be English words. For example, some possible English words are plab, forge, beak, shump, stas, heber, krong, trab, but they don't mean anything. And impossible English words, hope you get the joke, are mort, glissik, mak, misl, vlash, zbn, ngotch, tud, right? The impossible English words actually violate what's called the phonotactic rules of the language, meaning that these are the rules that guide what's possible in language, what's not, what combinations of speech sounds are possible and which ones are not. And that's very language specific. For English, ms is not possible at the beginning of words, vala as well, but in some other languages this is quite possible. Actually, Vladimir is a name that's possible in some other languages. So in order to understand the phonotactics or the system that guides the potential segment combinations, it is necessary to first take a look at syllables and syllable structures. Syllables are suprasegmental units. They are also above segments, and they organize segments into minimal-sized utterances in language. Syllables have three subparts, which we will cover today: the onset, the nucleus, and the coda. Together, the nucleus and coda form the rhyme. How many syllables are there in your name? I think you all know answer to this. So for my name, Dushan, it's Dushan, right? So two. And we were talking about this in our class. And we were doing a syllable pyramid. Remember, when you begin and then you count the syllables with certain words, right, that I read out to you. Syllables are generally organized around a phonological property called sonority. So while you have intuition, we have a way, you have intuition, right? But we have a way to scientifically show how many syllables there are and what these are. So they are organized around sonority. Sonority or sonorous means loud or perceived loudness. So speech sounds which are sonorous will be sonorants. They are vowels, they're liquids, nasals, and glides. They're basically singable. You can sing and say ah, or you can use a nasal such as or liquid even li, or glide. Wow, right? It's more singable than b. Actually, b cannot be singable. B, b, right? Even fricatives, s, sh, they are not sonorants. So stops and fricatives are called obstruents, and they are different from sonorants, which have lots of sonority. So the basic idea is that the most sonorous segments in a syllable form the peak or the nucleus of a syllable. And nucleus is obligatory. It's a mandatory property of a syllable. You cannot have a syllable without it. You cannot have a syllable without its peak. So this is just a relative sonority scale whereby we have some of the sounds in English, not all of them. Of course, vowels make good peaks because of sonority. For example, ah is very loud, a little bit less loud, e even less so, but still very sonorous. Then we have glides, liquids, and nasals. They're second best, such as l, n, m. And finally, obstruents, fricatives, and stops, which are the worst, right, in their sonority. So basically, the sonority scale looks like this. We have low vowels, high vowels, glides, liquids, and nasals as sonorants, and they have high sonority or relatively high sonority. and fricatives and stops that are obstruents and have low sonority. So this is an old idea that syllables are organized around peaks in sonority, so and which we call sonority sequencing principle. For example, bad is a very well-formed syllable in English. It has b, which is a stop, a low sonority, and it decreases, goes up, high sonority, reaches the peak, and then goes down, as if you have some kind of a curve that's very regular. Blend works well too. So on some kind of imaginary scale, b would be 0 in sonority, l maybe 5, and e 10. N again 5, and d 0. So it goes up and down, right? And this part of a syllable we call peak, and this sound reaches the sonority peak, mainly the loudness. The level of loudness goes up and then it goes down. So it reaches its peak of loudness. And the sonority peak is a nucleus of the syllable, or what's the core of the syllable, right? Nucleus meaning the core. The sounds that precede the nucleus are called, or form actually, the syllable onset. Onset means beginning, right? Start of something. So onsets are everything that goes before the peak. And finally, the sounds that follow the nucleus form the syllable coda. Coda, right? And these two would be coda sounds. Together, the nucleus and coda form the syllable rhyme, of course. And as I said, syllables have 3 subparts. We will mark a syllable with the sigma symbol, okay? Always use sigma. Sigma, or syllable, has an onset, which is a capital O, right? As in the first letter of onset. Then the first letter of nucleus is N, and the first letter of coda is C. Very simple, O and C. Together, the nucleus and coda form the rhyme, and we mark this rhyme with R. We will mainly focus on these 3 and forget about the rhyme for our purposes. If you remember, we talked about universality and generality, and I want to bring your attention to some of the rules or some of the regulations of syllables. In all languages, syllables must have a nucleus. All languages allow an onset. They appear to allow an onset. A Korean allows just 1 consonant in an onset. French permits 2. English allows up to 3, as in the word 3, right? Or not, maybe 3. Straight. Yeah, straight. That's a better example. Or street, sitter, right? This would be a 3 sound onset. No language requires that every syllable has a coda, so coda is not obligatory. In English, onsets, codas are optional. So in English, syllables must have a nucleus, but onsets and codas are optional, as in, for example, a word a pair. A would be a vowel and it's a peak, and that's it. That's all you need, right? And if you remember, when we talked about universality and generality and their differences, we know this is universality. It refers to all languages in the world, and we know that these 3 are parts of generality. They are specific to languages. This one is also universality principle, and this one would be a generality principle. Just a stroll down memory lane. In order to figure out how to organize a word into syllables, first identify the syllable nuclei, meaning this multiple syllable nucleuses or nuclei, if you want a plural, we look for vowels. So vowels are our nuclei, or any syllabic consonants, and we'll come to that part. For example, in America, there is a, e, I. These are our nuclei. There's not, we don't have to go further. We can just look for a, e, I. That's it. These are our nuclei. And then we can identify any potential onsets, such as m, right? Onset, onset, k, onset. Very simple. Consonants preceding the nuclei. All right, let's see some other examples. What should we do when we have bird, right? When we don't have a vowel at all. Well, this becomes a syllabic consonant. It becomes the nucleus. It carries the syllable. And that's why we mark it with this line below. Hidden as well. Hidden, right? Funnel, l as well. Funnel, right? Onset and nucleus. So these are syllabic consonants, and syllabic consonants can only be liquids and nasals, right? So phonotactic constraints determine what sounds can be put together to form the different parts of a syllable in a language. In English, onsets like cl is okay, clean, clamp, pl is okay, play, plaque, but tl is not okay. No English word starts with tl. And if we ever encounter a word that starts with tl, we have to do something about it. What should we do? Well, I'll tell you a little bit later. Just think about how you say the word Tlingit, or Dmitri, or Dvorsky, or even Svetlana, right? All of these words are foreign words, but you might have heard them somewhere. And what do we do when we encounter those words? I'll tell you a little bit later. Let's try another example. Let's try arcade. So arcade has presumably two syllables, right? The first nucleus is A, the second nucleus is A, right? Both halves of diphthong combine into one nucleus, right? So A, Y combine into one nucleus, like that. However, we know that erk is not a possible onset. Why is that so? Because erk cannot start any word in English. There is no word that starts with erk. No word. In that case, now we know that erk cannot be an onset, right? It cannot attach to this syllable here as an onset. The has to form the coda of the preceding syllable. So it needs to go into coda, and this one needs to go into onset, right? And of course, the is coda, everything be after our nucleus. All right, but why not arcade? It seems okay, right? Arcade. Why not that one? Well, I'll tell you why. So, first of all, erk cannot go into onset because erk doesn't start any word in English. But why not go into coda, both of them? Well, onsets are greedy. Onsets want to have at least one sound, right? What about emblem? Emblem is a good example. So you see these periods, that's how we will, when we are not drawing trees, that's how we will mark syllables. So emblem presumably has two syllables, right? Is it a mublem? Well, not a good candidate. There's no word that can start with mbl, right? So not good. What about embl, embl, yeah, possibility, why not? Or emblem, also possible. Emblem, also possible. So we have multiple possibilities. Which one to choose from? We have to abide by sonority principle with this emblem, the last one, emble. The sonority goes up when it should go down here at the end of the word, of the coda, right? At the end of a syllable. So we have to rule out this one. Now we are left with these two, emblem, emblem. Now bl, like in blue, can start a word. So this is good onset, why not? And emblem can also start a word. However, we know that onsets are very greedy. So the more you have in an onset, the better, if all other things are like sonority principle, and if you can start a word in English with that, and it's good, then put everything into onset. So our winning candidate should be this one, emblem, right? Not emblem, because the more you can have, if everything else is legal, the more you can have, the more sounds you can have in onset, better, because onsets are greedy. What about ugly? Ugly is a nice example. For example, ugly, not really good. Again, violating the sonority principle, going from low to high sonority when it should go down actually. So the third one is not good. Let's see the first and second. Is it ugly or ugly? Well, you can start a word with gl, right? Why not? Ugly, not too bad. And we know that in gl we are going from low to high, right? Sonority, so it's all good. In this case, because it's an onset of the word, it's an onset, unlike here where it's coda. So the first one satisfies all the single rules and all the single criteria, and onsets are greedy. It has more onsets than the second one. It should be our winning candidate. And that's how you decide. That's how you know it's not arcade, but it's arcade, right? That's how you will know, not just by following intuition, by following these phonological rules. But the possibilities are not endless, of course. What combination of consonants can form a possible onset? As I said, thr can start a word, so arthritic is syllabified like this, arthritic. But tl and nt cannot start a word, so they cannot form a legal syllable onset, so we have to break them apart. Atlantic, right? In other languages, phonotactic constraints may be active when words cross language boundaries. For example, in Spanish, the following consonant clusters cannot start syllables, p, st, sk. In English, they can. So we can say spit or stick or skate, right? But in Spanish, they need to add something to it. And they're adding a, like student, a student, right? Or a study. If you notice a little bit how Spanish speakers are saying this, you will see that what they're doing are actually nativizing the sound patterns. This process is called nativization, and it's very frequent. For example, in Japanese, who took over birth control name from English, nativized it into their own language and say basu kontororu, whereby in Japanese you need to have all the syllables with a vowel, right? As nucleus, there is no way you don't have nucleus, and this little guy here should be not there. It should be in the other, like before and the should be upside down, but that's okay. Or Hawaiian. Remember when we had a quick write, Mele Kalikimaka, or Merry Christmas. Cur is maybe possible in English, but not in Hawaiian. So they are going to nativize this, right? This process. And that's what we can do with Tlingit as well. Why not? What you can do with Tlingit is add a little bit of a um, schwa, right? You can maybe say Tlingit, right? That can work because it's easier. Tlingit. It's easier for production. Or Dimitri. You're adding a vowel there. Maybe not this one, maybe. I prefer this one, maybe. Dimitri, right? Or Dvorsky, right? You're making it easier for yourself and you're nativizing. Or Svitlana, whereby this could work, but Sevitlana or something like that should also be an option for you of nativization. All right, that would be it from me for this lesson. See you in the next one.